Do not allow your fire to go out, sparked by irreplaceable spark in the hopeless swamps of the not quite, the not yet, and the not at all. Do not let the hero in your soul perish in lonely frustration for the life you deserved and have not been able to reach. The world you desire can be won. It exists, it is real, it is possible, it is yours. I'm Mickey Mellon, this is Stacking Knowledge, and that was a quote from Ayn Rand from Robin Sharma's book, The 5 a.m. Club. I first read this about a year ago, and it convinced me that getting up at 5 a.m.-ish every day is worth it, and it really is. It's an interesting book, though. It's in the form of a fable, and quite a fantastical fable at that. There are 4 main characters, 2 going through this challenge, and then 2 guides. So you have the entrepreneur who's about to lose her company, and the artist who struggles going deep, and spoiler alert, they end up getting together at the end. And then you have the spellbinder and the billionaire that kind of take them through the story. The book also has a lot of checklists in it, like the 5 ways to do this or the 10 rules for doing that. I'll cover some of them in this. You can see all of them in the book. There's a lot of them in the book, but there's some good ones I want to pull out here. So let's dig in. So he starts by saying early on, quote, "The great women and men of the world were all givers, not takers. Renounce the common delusion that those who accumulate the most win. Instead, do work that is heroic, that staggers your marketplace by the quality of its originality as well as from the helpfulness it provides." He also says, quote, "Limitation is nothing more than a mentality that too many good people practice daily until they believe it's reality. It breaks my heart to see so many potentially powerful human beings stuck in a story about why they can't be extraordinary personally and professionally. You need to remember that your excuses are seducers, your fears are liars, and your doubts are thieves." And so he has a lot of those cute phrases. Excuses are seducers, fears are liars, but I mean, it's good stuff in here. He says, quote, "No matter where you are on the pathway of your life, please don't let the pain of an imperfect past hinder the glory of your fabulous future." And then to wrap that one up here, we're in chapter 2. We're going to end in chapter 2. He says, quote, "World class begins where your comfort zone ends is a rule the successful, the influential, and the happiest always remember." So now they start putting them together. Chapter 3 is called An Unexpected Encounter with a Surprising Stranger. He leads with a quote from Marcus Aurelius who says, quote, "Do not live as if you have 10,000 years left. Your fate hangs over you. While you are still living, while you still exist on this earth, strive to become a genuinely great person." Related, he shares a quote from Pablo Picasso that says, quote, "You should learn the rules like a pro so you could break them like an artist." And then another quote that kind of is a trend we'll see a lot through this book here. He says, quote, "The moment when you most feel like giving up is the instant when you must find it in you to press ahead." So then he gets into chapter 4 here, letting go of mediocrity and all that's ordinary. He shares a quote from Alice in Wonderland that says, quote, "Why, sometimes I believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." And so they talk about, impossible things and a lot of dreaming and trying to do that. But he also shares, through the book, how getting up at 5 a.m. will help you reach your goals and plan more and get more done. And it really does help a lot with that. So a quote here from the book. This is where you start hearing some of the characters I mentioned earlier. He said, quote, "Okay," said the artist to the quirky stranger, "you asked me what I liked best from the talk. I definitely liked the part where the spellbinder talked about the Spartan warrior credo that says, 'One who sweats more in training bleeds less in war.' And I liked his line, 'High victory is made in those early morning hours when no one's watching and while everyone else is sleeping.' His teachings on the value of a world-class morning routine were great." And then this is kind of a section, I think this exact quote is throughout the book a few times, but he says, quote, "Take excellent care of the front end of your day, and the rest of your day will pretty much take care of itself. Own your morning, elevate your life." Then he talks about technology, the problems with technology. He says, "Your point about being addicted to technology, just remember that intelligently used, it advances human progress. Though using technology through our lives becomes better, our knowledge becomes richer and our wonderful world becomes smaller. It's the misuse of technology that's ruining people's minds, damaging their productivity and destroying the very fabric of our society. Your phone is costing you a fortune, you're playing with it all day long." And then he talks about a short quip here. He says, quote, "The soreness of growth is so much less expensive than the devastating cost of regret." And that's something we see a lot of things in life. It's much easier to eat better than it is to deal with being, overweight and older. And it's difficult to eat well. It's difficult to give up smoking now, but so much better than the devastating cost later. But the soreness of growth is so much less expensive than the devastating cost of regret. Then they get into, quote, chapter 5 here. He says, "A bizarre adventure into morning mastery." Quote from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. He says, quote, "Everyone holds his fortune in his own hands. Like a sculptor, the raw material he will fashion into a figure. The skill to mold the material into what we want must be learned and attentively cultivated." He shares, talks about, there's a hobo that shows up who actually I think is the spellmaster, one of the characters there. But the hobo spun around and unbuttoned his hole-ridden shirt. On his firm, strided back was a tattoo with the words, "Victims love entertainment. Victors adore education." Victims love entertainment. Victors adore education. It's, again, something we'll kind of talk about in the book quite a bit. I mean, there's certainly a place for entertainment, but people that just live on entertainment all day long and don't worry about the education side of things tend to end up worse as time goes on. Chapter 6 is a flight to peak productivity, virtuosity, and undefeatability. He leads with a quote from Steve Jobs. It says, quote, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of another person's thinking. Don't let the noise of other people's opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become." And then we get into the first set of the rules. I mentioned he has these checklists that go throughout. So here's the rules he has. There's 5 rules for achieving what we just talked about with Steve Jobs. So rule 1, he says, quote, "An addiction to distraction is the end of your creative production." An addiction to distraction is the end of your creative production. Empire makers and history creators take 1 hour for themselves before dawn in the serenity that lies beyond the clutches of complexity to prepare themselves for a world-class day. So that was rule 1. Rule 2, excuses breed no genius. Just because you haven't installed the early rising habit before doesn't mean you can't do it now. Release your rationalizations and remember that small daily improvements, when done consistently over time, lead to stunning results. Rule 3, all change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. Everything you now find easy, you first found difficult. With consistent practice, getting up with the sun will become your new normal and automatic. Rule number 4, to have the results the top 5% of producers have, you must start doing what 95% of people are unwilling to do. As soon as you start to live like this, the majority will call you crazy. Remember that being labeled as a freak is the price of greatness. And again, I think if you look at the great people in time, they were probably labeled a freak for some aspect of their life or another. And then rule 5, when you feel like surrendering, continue. Triumph loves the relentless. So yeah, his 5 rules. An addiction to distraction is the end of your creative production. Rule 2, excuses breed no genius. Rule 3, all change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. Rule 4, to have the results the top 5% of producers have, you must start doing what 95% are unwilling to do. And rule 5, when you feel like surrendering, continue. So on to chapter 7, he opens with a quote from Stephen Pressfield that says, quote, "A child has no trouble believing the unbelievable, nor does the genius or the madman. It is only you and I, with our big brains and our tiny hearts, who doubt and overthink and hesitate." And so this chapter is called Preparation for a Transformation Begins in Paradise. And so they kind of take them to paradise. Again, it's kind of a fantastical story going through here, but the lessons in it, I think, are solid. There's one quote in this chapter I really liked. He says, "Health is the crown on the well person's head that only the ill person can see." I never thought about that before. Yeah, health is the crown on the well person's head that only the ill person can see. If you're sick with something, if you have cancer, if you have some bad diagnosis, you'll see someone walking around normal and you'll see a crown on their head like, wow, they're healthy, and they don't know they have that crown. And so it's important, I think, just to remember that for us. If you're healthy, be happy. Appreciate the gift that you have, the crown on your head, because other people see that in you. If they're not doing as well, they see that crown on your head, and so be aware of it and use that accordingly. Chapter 8, the 5 a.m. method, the morning routine of world builders. Just in here, I'll only just share a quick quote from Aristotle. He says, quote, "It is well to be up before daybreak, for such habits contribute to health, wealth, and wisdom." Number 9, he talks about a framework for the expression of greatness. Opens with a quote from Lao Tzu, who says, quote, "The men who are great live with that which is substantial. They do not stay with that which is superficial. They abide with realities. They remain not with what is showy. The one they discard, the other they hold." And so, the men who are great live with that as which is substantial. Do not stay with that which is superficial. Yeah, sorry, complicated sentence there, but it's great. I'll quote here from the Billionaire in the book here, talking about the spellbinder. Again, lots of these characters in the book, but he says, quote, "The spellbinder calls the phenomenon pervading commerce these days the collective deprofessionalization of business," noted the Billionaire. "People who should be working, delighting customers, showcasing extraordinary skills, unlocking otherworldly value for their organizations so both they and their firms experience success, are watching inane videos on their phone, shopping online for shoes, or scrolling through their social feeds. I've never seen people so disengaged at work, so checked out, and so exhausted, and I've never seen people making so many mistakes." And so making mistakes and doing all that kind of ties together. And then he kind of says another piece here that ties into that directly. He says, quote, "How often do you meet someone at a store or in a restaurant who is fully present, astoundingly polite, unusually knowledgeable, full of enthusiasm, incredibly hardworking, intensely imaginative, noticeably inventive, and gasp-worthily great at what they do? Almost never, right?" And so that's one, again, I think we all want to be that person where they say, holy cow, this person is fully present and astoundingly polite and unusually knowledgeable and full of enthusiasm. And most of us are not that, and most people we run into are not that, but that does stand out. And so if you can take some of those traits and start using them yourself, that can make a difference here. Chapter 10 is the 4 focuses of history makers, and we'll talk about, again, another list here. We'll have those 4 focuses. He starts with a quote from Marcus Cicero that says, quote, "The life given us by nature is short, but the memory of a well-spent life is eternal." And so this is from someone that lived thousands of years ago, and sure enough, the well-spent life is eternal. Let's see. So into those history maker focuses. Again, the 4 focuses of history makers. The first one is the first history maker focus is capitalization IQ. He says, "Dedication and discipline beats brilliance and giftedness every day of the week. And A players don't get lucky; they make lucky. Each time you resist a temptation and pursue an optimization, you invigorate your heroism. Every instant you do that, which you know to be right, over the thing that you feel would be easy, you facilitate your entry into the Hall of Fame of epic achievers." And then back to the being distracted, he has a quote after that. He says, quote, "Victims have big TVs, leaders own large libraries." So that was the first one, capitalization IQ. The history maker focus number 2 is freedom from distraction. He says, quote, "Accept fewer invitations, major in fewer leisure activities and study, then master a smaller number of books versus skimming many. An intense concentration on only what matters is how most pros realize victory. Simplify, simplify, simplify." And then he shares a quote from psychologist Abraham Maslow, who says, quote, "If you plan on being anything less than who you're capable of being, you will probably be unhappy all the days of your life." So freedom from distraction. Then he talks about number 3 here is personal mastery practice. He goes back to, remember the Spartan warrior credo they shared at the seminar: sweat more in practice, bleed less in war. So yeah, they hit that a good bit. And then he talks about the 4 interior empires to train, cultivate, iterate before the sun comes up. So talking about the personal mastery practice, those 4 traits would be mindset, heart set, health set, and soul set. Mindset, heart set, health set, and soul set. He'll get into that a bit more. And then the focus number 4 is day stacking, which is small, daily, seemingly insignificant improvements, when done consistently over time, yield staggering results. So the 4 history maker focuses, again, are capitalization IQ, freedom from distraction, personal mastery practice, and day stacking. So chapter 11, he gets into navigating the tides of life. Opens with a quote from Helen Keller. Says, quote, "The best and most beautiful things in this world cannot be seen or even heard, but must be felt with the heart." He says here, quote, "Often a bad example teaches us more about who we wish to become than a good one could ever provide. And in this world of so many hardened human beings who have lost access to who they truly are, she vowed to conduct the remainder of her days modeling excellence, resilience, and the utmost of kindness." And then chapter 12, the 5 a.m. Club discovers the habit installation protocol. So let's get into it. He's got a couple different groups in here. So we have the 5 scientific truths behind excellent habits. So there's 5 truths here. The first one is world-class willpower isn't an inborn strength, but a skill developed through relentless practice. Getting up at dawn is perfect self-control training. Truth 2, personal discipline is a muscle. The more you stretch it, the stronger it grows. Therefore, the samurais of self-regulation actively create conditions of hardship to build their natural power. Truth 3, like other muscles, willpower weakens when tired. Recovery is, therefore, absolutely necessary for the expression of mastery and to manage decision fatigue. Truth 4, installing any great habit successfully follows a distinct 4-part pattern for the automation of the routine. And then truth 5, increasing self-control in one area of your life elevates self-control in all areas of your life. This is why joining the 5 a.m. Club is the game-changing habit that will lift everything else you do. And then he gets into 3 values of heroic habit makers. The 3 values of heroic habit makers. Value 1 is victory demands consistency and persistency. Value 2, following through on what is started determines the size of the personal respect that will be generated. Following through on what is started determines the size of the personal respect that will be generated. And then value 3, to become a heroic habit maker, is the way you practice in private is precisely the way you'll perform once you're in public. The one general theory of self-disciplined Spartans: to regularly do that which is hard but important when it feels like most uncomfortable is how warriors are born. To regularly do that which is hard but important when it feels most uncomfortable is how warriors are born. He'll unpack that general theory of that, the doing what's hard but important, a good bit more. Let's see. We'll jump ahead a little bit further, though. We'll go to the 5 a.m. Club. He has the 20-20-20 formula. He loves his formulas and lists in this book, but some are pretty good. Quote from Marcus Aurelius to kick off this chapter. He says, quote, "Early in the morning, when you're reluctant in your laziness to get up, let this thought be at hand. Quote, I am rising to do the work of a human being." So he's saying that'll help you get out of bed. If you're not sure you want to get up, I am rising to do the work of a human being. That's a cool way to do it. So in here, yeah, the 20-20-20 formula is just taking that first hour of your day, he has from 5 to 6 a.m., and the 3 sections you should do: 20 minutes of move, 20 minutes of reflect, and 20 minutes of grow. So moving would be to exercise, hydrate, and to do some deep breathing. The reflect would be to journal, meditate, plan, pray, those sorts of things. And then pocket 3 is to grow, to review your goals, do some reading, listen to some podcasts. But he's saying if you start your day out with that, and he's big on exercise first. I don't do that yet. I do get up at 5, but I don't exercise till about 7:30. I knock things out first. And maybe worth trying sometime to see how that affects things. He talks in this chapter as well. He says, quote, "You've talked about how the great ones leverage periods of isolation. I've read that many famous geniuses had a habit of sitting in solitude for hours with nothing more than a pad of paper and a pen for capturing the insights that would start flashing across the screen of their imaginations." And I've shared this before on my blog. There's a thing in EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system that we follow at Green Melon, called clarity breaks, where you're supposed to regularly go outside with exactly that, a pad of paper and a pen, and just see what happens. It's weird and frustrating for the first few minutes. You're just like looking around at birds and whatever, but eventually you say, oh yeah, I thought about that thing, and you'll have some ideas that pop up, and it can be pretty awesome. He says, also in this chapter, he says, quote, "Calm performers are the highest achievers. There's nothing crackerjack about meditation, so get over any biases you might have around the skill and go ahead and lock it in." And then he shares a quote from Seneca, the Roman statesman. He says, quote, "Each day acquires something that will fortify you against poverty, against death. Indeed, against other misfortunes as well. And after you've run over many thoughts, select one to be thoroughly digested that day." So yeah, as you think about lots of things, pick the one that you really want to dig through. Then, of course, he does the flip side of this. If you're going to get up at 5 a.m., that requires a good evening to get you there. If you still go to bed at midnight or 1, getting up at 5 is not going to last long. It's not going to go well. So he talks about that. So yeah, chapter 14 is the 5 a.m. club grasps the essentialness of sleep. So he starts with a quote from H.G. Wells. He says, quote, "You cannot imagine the craving for rest I feel, a hunger and a thirst. For 6 long days since my work was done, my mind has been a whirlpool, swift, unprogressive, and incessant, a torrent of thoughts leading nowhere, spinning round, swift, and steady." And so he talks about how to handle your evening. He kind of gives a 3-hour window there, basically going to sleep at 10. So going back to 7, he says between 7 and 8 should be your last meal of the day, and should turn off your devices at that point, start easing off those. 8 to 9 is time for real conversations with loved ones and meditation. And then from 9 to 10, prepare for sleep. Organize your exercise gear for the morning. This is, a common habit helping technique is if you wake up in the morning needing to exercise and your stuff's laid out, ready to go, that will help you do it. And then he also says run through an evening gratitude practice, which we've talked about in this podcast quite a few times. I liked also in this chapter, he talks about Mahatma Gandhi's words that said, quote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And he unpacks that further to say what it really was. He says what he actually said was, if we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world around him. We need not wait to see what others do. And so I love that as a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change toward him. I misread it the first time there. The attitude of the world change toward him. So it's not that the world changes around you, but you see it differently. If you have a better attitude with things, if you see the best in people, if you behave properly, you'll notice more of that in other people. It's like, wow, everyone's becoming better too. It's amazing. Same if you think everyone's the worst, everyone's out to get you, then you will think everyone's out to get you, and it all goes downhill that way as well. Next, in chapter 15, he says the title is "The 5 a.m. Club is mentored on the 10 tactics of lifelong genius." And so again, more lists out of him here. He opens with a quote from Michelangelo, though. He starts with, quote, "If you knew how much work went into it, you would not call it genius." And so again, as an artist or whatever, it looks like genius. They made this sculpture, made this artwork, but yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into it. So the 10 tactics of lifelong genius, we'll hit these real quick too. One is the tight bubble of total focus, just staying in control. Next is the 90-90-1 rule. So again, he loves his rules too. But for this one, for the next 90 days, schedule yourself to invest the first 90 minutes of your workday on the one activity that, when completed at world class, will cause you to own your field. This 90-minute period must be completely free of noise and interruption. Place your devices in a bag marked for my 90-91 period, and then leave that bag in another room. Installing clear boundary fences that block access to temptations is a potent tactic to decrease them. Then he has the 60-10 method. He says, after you've run the 90-91 segment of your workday, use a timer and work at your best for 60 minutes straight while sitting or standing quietly in your tight bubble of total focus. Train yourself not to move, just concentrate, and create the highest results you possibly make. After your 60-minute productivity sprint is done, refuel for 10 minutes, hence the 60-10. Tactic 5 is the daily 5 concept. During the second pocket of your victory hour, list the 5 tiny targets you wish to accomplish over the day ahead for you to feel like it was one well spent. I've seen this a lot of places. The full focus planner, I used that for a while. They had like the big 3 for the day. So they said pick big 3 things. But if you say, hey, here's the things I want to get accomplished today, that can make a huge difference. Tactic 5 is the second wind workout. To activate the second wind workout, schedule a second workout at the end of your workday to give you a second wind for a great evening. He has the 2 massage protocol. To apply the 2 massage protocol, lock 2 90-minute massages into your weekly schedule, because things that get scheduled are things that get done. So that's interesting. I have a massage maybe once a year, so perhaps I need to do more there. We'll see about that. Tactic 7 is Traffic University. Participating in Traffic University is all about leveraging your travel time, whether to and from work or grocery shopping and errand running, to learn, expanding your professional prowess and personal knowledge. Specific ideas to help you do so include listening to audiobooks and consuming valuable podcasts. Tactic 8 is the Dream Team technique. Delegate tasks that are not only a poor use of your hands, but also diminish your happiness. Tactic 9 is the weekly design system. Carve out and ritualize 30 minutes early each Sunday morning to create your blueprint for a beautiful week. I do a similar thing. I do it on Fridays, actually, so I can have that done before the weekend starts. But I know a lot of folks that do it on Sunday. That can work well. And then Tactic 10 is the 60-minute student. For at least 60 minutes a day, study. Do whatever it takes to fireproof your commitment to relentless growth. And this is something I've tried to do and not done well. My friend Adam likes to read for at least 60 minutes a day, and he's on a streak of almost 2 years of reading at least 60 minutes every single day, which is fantastic. And he's a busy dude. If he can do it, I know we all can. So I have no one to blame for failing on this one than myself, and something I'll keep working towards. So those were the 10 tactics for lifelong genius. They were, the tight bubble of total focus, the 90-91 rule, the 60-10 method, the daily 5 concept, the second wind workout, the 2 massage protocol, Traffic University. Number 8 was the Dream Team technique. Tactic 9 was the weekly design system, and Tactic 10 was the 60-minute student. Then we get into, chapter 16. They embrace the twin cycles of elite performance, so they get into that. We won't go there too much. Just a happy quote from Oscar Wilde that just says, quote, "With freedom, books, flowers, and the moon, who could not be happy?" So again, just being thankful for things you have. Then they get into the Billionaire's Maxims, and the Billionaire has 11 Maxims. Again, I've skipped a lot of these lists, and there's still a lot we're covering here, but these are pretty good. So Maxim 1 is to create magic in the world, own the magic within yourself. He says, look in the mirror. Your relationship with you predicts your relationship with the world. Remember that you have a primitive longing for silence and solitude, and that it is in quietude and self-awareness. It is in quietude that self-awareness rises. She has a quote from Blaise Pascal that says, quote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Maxim number 2 is collect miraculous experiences over material things. So work to collect amazing experiences over buying more things. Travel more, buy less. It's a common thing people would say there, and I tend to agree with that. Maxim 3 is failure inflates fearlessness. He has a quote from J.K. Rowling that says, "It is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default." It is impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. So failure inflates fearlessness. Number 4, proper use of your primal power creates your personal utopia. He says, that's a lot of P's in there. He says, quote, "Many human beings spend their finest hours in a facade of satisfaction. By this, I mean they think and say they are happy, but in reality they are miserable." Maxim number 5, avoid bad people. He talks about that a good bit. We won't go in there. Maxim 6, he says, "Money is a fruit of generosity, not scarcity. Do not be misled by the dominant philosophy of the world. Poverty is the consequence of an inner condition, not an outer situation. To believe otherwise is to hand over your capacity to produce the magic of the prosperity that you want to make the very things you were complaining of." Maxim number 7 is optimal health maximizes your power to produce magic. So exercising first thing in the morning gets the primary win taken care of, getting your health out of the way. This all-important activity is now done, leaving your cognition, energy, physiology, and spirit primed to create wonders within your day. He says, number 8, continue raising your life standards toward absolute world class. Hedonic adaptation describes the psychological circumstance where human beings adapt to environmental and life changes. Basically, as you make things better, you'll kind of learn, and that becomes normal. So he said, just never stop trying to make things better. You can always be improving things. So no matter how great you are, how great or bad you are, you're gonna think that's normal. So always be working harder. Maxim 9, deep love yields unconquerable joy. Deep love yields unconquerable joy. I think that one. Actually, there's one quote in here I do want to share from William Penn. He says, quote, I expect to pass through life but once. If, therefore, there can be any kindness I can show or any good thing that I can do to any fellow being, let me do it now and not defer or neglect it, as I shall not pass this way again. So deep love yields unconquerable joy. Number 10, heaven on earth is a state, not a place. He says, quote, take daily voyages into awe and regular adventures into wonder. And then number 11, tomorrow is a bonus, not a right. And you talked about that a little bit with Marcus Aurelius and some of those. Accidents, illness, loss, and death happen every day. It's human nature to think those will never occur, yet all wise philosophers teach us of the transience of our existence. So those are the 11 billionaire maxims, kind of just to recap there. Create magic in the world, own the magic within yourself. 2 is to collect miraculous experiences over material things. 3 is failure inflates fearlessness. 4 is proper use of your primal power creates your personal utopia. 5 was avoid bad people. 6, money is the fruit of generosity, not scarcity. 7 was optimal health maximizes your power to produce magic. Number 8, continue raising your life standards towards absolute world class. Number 9, deep love yields unconquerable joy. Number 10, heaven on earth is a state, not a place. Number 11, tomorrow is a bonus, not a right. And then we kind of, as we start wrapping things up here, chapter 17, the 5 a.m. Club members become heroes of their lives. Shares a quote from J.M. Coetzee, who says, quote, live like a hero. That's what the classics teach us. Be a main character. Otherwise, what is life for? And then he ends with one last little list. This is a shorter one. The 7 virtues of world changers. The 7 virtues of world changers. They are bravery, forgiveness, integrity, understanding, sincerity, politeness, and humility. So I think that's kind of worth repeating. The 7 virtues of world changers. We should all strive to be all 7 of these. I don't disagree with any of these 7. We should all have these. Bravery, forgiveness, integrity, understanding, sincerity, politeness, and humility. And then a good quote to kind of end on here that kind of summarizes things well. Again, I encourage you to check out the book for yourself. It's a little longer than it should have been. It's a weird story, but there's a lot that really works out in it. So we'll end here with this. He says, quote, to lead is to inspire others by the way that you live. To lead is to walk through the fires of your hardest times to step up into forgiveness. To lead is to remove any form of mediocrity from infiltrating the quarters of your life in a dazzling celebration of the majesty that is your birthright. To lead is to turn your terrors into triumphs and translate each of your heartbreaks into heroism. And more than all else, to lead is to be a force for good on this tiny planet of ours. Today, you get to accept this grand call to raise the standard by which you live out the remainder of your life.